Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leaving Nothing Undared, a podcast from the Department of Continuing Education at Oblate School of Theology. My name is Antonio Fritzi, and I'm the Director of Continuing Education here at OST. It's my pleasure to welcome you today as we talk about the upcoming annual Escobedo Lecture this Thursday, September 12th at 7 p.m. in the Whitley Center. This lecture series is a cherished tradition here at OST, and it's made possible through the generosity of Ruben and Veronica Salazar Escobedo, both of whom are honorary oblates of Mary Immaculate. This year, we're honored to have Dr. Victor Carmona as our speaker. Dr. Carmona's work addresses immigration ethics and explores the Church's role in addressing the complex challenges faced by migrants. This topic, or the topic of his upcoming talk, is Politics and Love, a Vision from Catholic Social Teaching. And it's incredibly timely and relevant as we navigate today's social and political landscape. So let's get started. Hello, Victor, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. We're very much excited to hear more about your work and what we can expect from the upcoming Escobedo Lecture. So I'd love it if you could start by telling us a little bit about what inspired you to focus your academic and professional life on Catholic social teaching, and particularly the issue of migration.
It was my experience growing up here at the border. Not in the San Antonio side of the border, but on the California side of the border, California and Baja California. And it was in college. I was working on learning more about migration, which is something that I experienced in my community and that I saw growing up. And it was this sister, an RSCJ sister, who encouraged me to think about this from the perspective of Catholic social teaching. And I didn't know what it was. So she was the one who got me hooked. And ever since, it's been nonstop.
That's wonderful. That's, it really speaks to that kind of personal dimension of the issue, to the community and culture that shaped you as an individual, as well as an academic and professional.
Yes. Yeah.
So I understand that you've worked closely with these communities for many years. How have those experiences, right, influenced your approach to theological ethics and your teaching?
I hope and I believe that by making it more grounded, it's one thing to read about migration. It's one thing to, think about the theories around why it happens and how it happens and so on. But it's a completely different matter to actually accompany those who are themselves migrants and refugees and asylum seekers. Being mindful and open and attentive to their experiences has been a humbling exercise, and it's forced my theology to be more attentive to being compassionate, and the challenge of just being mindful that compassion has to be essential to what we do as theologians. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate about that perspective, that humanizing, compassionate, mindful perspective of others, is that very often, sometimes, especially from the outside, theology as an academic discipline might appear to be a little removed, right, from people's day-to-day lives. But I think Catholic social teaching, your work, and of course, the Escobedo Lecture as an institution at Oblate really seeks to connect that theological understanding, experience of God with people's day-to-day lives.
It was the experience of working with the Oblates of Mary Immaculate at their mission in Tijuana that really got me interested in the possibility of doing theology and becoming a theologian. Coming into theology after having worked with the church, with bishops, and then, the last 2 years before I did so with the Oblates, really gave me a different perspective and grounded the way that I approach doing theology in just meaningful ways. And, when I was trying to decide what kind of theology I wanted to specialize in, I asked the folks at Notre Dame, I'm like, hey, which one's the most practical theology? They said, well, moral theology, it has to do with Catholic social teaching. I'm like, sign me up for that. And it was precisely that attentiveness to the practical that drew me to the Oblates, and eventually to, serving with the Oblates at Oblate School of Theology for 5 years, 5 wonderful years.
Yeah, and it's going to be wonderful, of course, to have you back. I'll shift a little bit, especially since you mentioned working with the bishops. I think it's important for us to also be mindful of the institutional dimension of what our faith and the Catholic experience and the Catholic culture asks of us. So, you mentioned Pope Francis's encyclical Fratelli Tutti as this kind of significant document emphasizing and calling for this increased mindfulness of one another, a kind of friendship, really. Can you speak a little bit to how this encyclical informs your perspective on a politics of love, right? The title of your lecture, and how it will shape what you'll speak to us about.
Fratelli Tutti does a lot of things, but one of the most impressive perspectives that it offers is an invitation to be loving, to love through politics. Frankly, the way things are right now in our country, I can't think of anything more challenging than that for disciples of Christ, for fellow Catholics. How do we practice love in politics today? So that's the invitation that I would like us to explore while we're together through the Escobedo Lecture.
Wonderful. Yeah, and so it's something that will speak to people's personal experience. Is there something that you really hope that attendees to the lecture will take away from it, or something that they might receive from that kind of experience together?
I hope that their takeaway is an invitation to love, to practice love in the coming months as we approach the elections. And, I hope they take away having conversation with, not just with me, but with fellow attendees, to explore and imagine what could we do in our parishes and beyond our parishes. How can we be Christ's disciples in the coming months amidst a politics that is really calling us to love our neighbor right here, right now?
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, one of the things that makes the Escobedo Lecture such a cherished tradition at Oblate, as I've noted before, is that it really takes our faith and that experience and connects it to what we go through as human beings living in the world. And I think you're very right to say that at this time of the year, in this season of election and political consideration, it can often be very challenging not to lose sight of the human being on the other side of the discourse, right? And so this politics of love that you're describing, that Pope Francis is calling us to, is indeed remarkably appropriate for this moment that we're going through together.
That's I'm looking forward to spending time with everyone who's attending, and I encourage them to come. It's going to be a wonderful experience, great conversation, and it's going to be helpful for the coming months as we continue our work in our parishes and beyond.
Thank you. Yeah. So I want to thank you again. We're so excited for you to be back on campus, back at Oblate and in San Antonio, and really excited for you to share your insights with us at the lecture. It's clear that it's going to offer some really valuable perspectives on how Catholic social teaching can guide us in these challenging times. So thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
To everyone watching, don't miss this opportunity to hear more from Dr. Victor Carmona at the annual Escobedo Lecture. The event will take place on Thursday, September 12th at 7 p.m. in Spanish, and on Friday, September 13th at 10 a.m. in English. Thursday's lecture will be available both in person and virtually, while Friday's colloquium will be in person only. Registration is required and the event is free. To register, please visit us at www.ost.edu or our Eventbrite page. We look forward to seeing you there. God bless you.